Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October meeting of the MTA Board. Do we have any public speakers, Mr. Morello?
Yes, sir. We have 16 signed up. Good turnout for a rainy day. I would remind all of our speakers that we ask you all to keep your comments to our 2-minute limit out of respect and fairness for all other speakers. When you get to about the 90-second mark, you will hear and see the lights and tone. And that's just a reminder, you don't have to stop that second, but you should begin to wind down your remarks. The first speaker is William Henderson. He'll be followed by Esther Mata.
Good morning. We congratulate and express our appreciation to the governor, the mayor, the chairman, and all the MTA staff and board members who worked so hard on capital program funding. A resolution was critical to the health of our city, state, and region. We applaud all of you for crafting a solution that combines substantial state resources, restoration of the city's leading role in funding transit infrastructures, and the MTA's commitment to contracting, procurement, and other efficiencies. Even with an agreement, there's immense capital needs, and we have to look to the future of capital programs and recognize that as much as is committed to this capital program, more will be needed in the future. While securing resources are difficult, the payoff is well worth the effort. We've been making this case for the past 2 years in a partnership with the Urban Land Institute, and in our contacts with business and civic leaders, our release of Keeping New York on Track, an interactive report highlighting the value of investing in the capital program. Through this project, we sought the perspective of many business and community leaders and soon found that to a person, they're convinced of the critical importance of capital program spending and public transportation to our region. And they're willing to provide the resources even if they're going to be paying for it. What these individuals are lacking is nuance and understanding of public transportation and the role of capital spending and an assurance that their interests are going to be reflected in the planning process. It's been a painful process the last 2 capital programs. We feel that one reason for this is a lack of connection between the capital planning process and stakeholders. The PCAC agrees with the Reinvention Commission that there have to be ongoing partnerships, not just an outreach effort around the launch of a capital program proposal. We need a continuous and transparent process of 2-way communication among MTA elected officials and all other stakeholders. MTA has to communicate progress and priorities, but it has to also engage the private sector and larger community in an ongoing dialogue. Only through doing this can we avoid history repeating itself for the 2020-2024 capital program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Esther Mata, who will be followed by Sandra Lennon.
Good morning. My name is Esther Mota. I work with GCS Agents. I also, it's a subcontract company by the MTA for paratransit services. We work at the call center. We were here last month, and it's about the $152,900,000 approved contract for GCS to run the call center, and how it was broken up for certain numbers per year, and how we figured that it's not being followed. Apart from that, we're struggling on the floor to find a seat, and management is slightly manipulating the way that things look, putting people in the break rooms and so forth, so it doesn't look like we're just walking around without a seat trying to find a station to work. I will tell you that I greatly appreciate your attention from last meeting. We have all started to see how you have started to implement and do your due diligence into what we're telling you. We greatly do appreciate that. Let's see, I do, I do just also want to reiterate that there's a little bit of bullying after every single event that GCS, TWU holds together. We lose another member. Edwin Guzman was fired after the MTA board meeting. I am right now up for termination, and I am debating it with my team lead. And I feel like a lot of us come into work, and because the trains that we take the trains, the MTA trains, the trains that take us into work, if they're running delayed and we're stuck underground, we can't call them and we can't make it into our shift on time, we're out of luck. And then when we don't find a computer to actually sign in, it's a headache, okay? We do appreciate all of your help. It's been so good in the last 30 days to see the advancement that the company is trying to do after you guys have started to say something. So thank you for that. My team leads are also, my members, colleagues are also here to speak with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Moda. For the next 14 speakers, I'm calling you in the order in which Ms. Moda signed you in. Sandra Lennon, to be followed by Joy Williams.
Good morning. My name is Sandra Lennon. I'm an ex-employee of GCS. Like I explained last meeting that I was terminated because I supported the union. We spoke to the Inspector General Monday. They were at GCS yesterday. We're basically here because we want to know what the findings was and the results of the investigations that I guess the MTA has done. But there is a big difference. I've been hearing from a lot of members that there's a big difference upstairs, the quality of air, the heat. They're still working on the bed bug situation, but the team leads is not as harsh as they were. And I thank you for that.
Joy Williams will be followed by Dahlia Oakley.
Joy would like to give her time back to us. Joy was another member that we lost after the last meeting. And we also have another member that after the last meeting ended up in the hospital after having what the doctor said bug bites in her body after arriving at work. I myself have marks of bed bugs from the back of my knee, on the back of my knees from my seat. After I removed the seat, the feeling went away. Took a few weeks for the marks to go away. But something needs to be done over our office. We would love to invite you to come into the building, come into our office. It's a 24-hour facility. You can see us there all day during the rush hours of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can see agents walking around looking for seats. We would love either a different setup or maybe more seating, a different location if need be. But we are there to work. We love what we do. We love to help the community that is serviced by the ADA Act. We love what we do, and we just want you to help us make it a little bit easier for us to do our job, live within our city, and help our community. Anyone else want to add? Thank you.
Dahlia Oakley.
All right, thank you, Board. Mr. Pendergast.
I'm sorry, you are?
My name is Robert Brown. I am on the list, but she's yielding her time.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay. All right, like she said, we appreciate you guys coming out, checking on some of the situation that we complained about last time. One of the things I want to talk about is the policy. I heard a billionaire say the policy doesn't make a company, it's the people that make the company. And we love our jobs, as my coworkers said. We love our coworkers. We love the management who have not forgotten where they came from. We love our clients. We love what we do. We do not love a large share of the policies of GCS it has with the workers, some inconsiderate, harsh, brutal, and downright draconian. Let me share two. We just talked about that. If you're late, and it was an issue with the trains, after you're proving it with the MTA saying it was our delays, you're still late and we'll discipline you, and yes, it still can and will lead to a termination if we have people, and today we have people here that have been a victim to that particular policy. Another one is the most extreme policy to me, is the closed policy, not with the workers, but with the contract that you have with GCS. They proposed and won a contract stating that we will pay the workers $13 an hour performing one duty. Instead, a majority of the workers are performing two duties. Individually proposed, yes, they combined the two into one job, and they still pay what they decide we're worth, $9 to $11 an hour, doing multiple jobs for the MTA, and that's not fair. Majority of the workers being minority, mostly black, it sends a signal to us that the workers, again, that our lives do not matter, we do not count, and we should and we do count. My mom said if you state to someone you do one thing, if you state to someone that you'll do one thing and you're well able to do it and you do not, that make you dishonest and lack integrity. It kills your ability to be trustworthy. That statement not only goes to an individual, but it goes to the people who are individuals running the company. If you say you're going to do one thing, make sure you do it. If not, that makes you lack integrity, and it makes you dishonest.
Thank you. How about Keith Hodges?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Keith Hodges. I've worked for Paratransit a year and a half now. And honestly, if I told you my story, I'd probably need 2 hours. But my question to you is, how could a vendor like such as GCS come get a government contract approved, signed, and from day one not have to honor anything in this contract? For the members to and workers to get together, vote in the union, and a year later still fighting with GCS for proper wages, fair treatment, and this just be looked over like nothing ever happened. The military-style voting to get the union in, where we won by a landslide to elect TWU, and still to be fighting for fair wages, a contract, fair treatment. We just looking for some answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keith Green? Depends on who he yields it to. So who will be the next speaker?
Good morning. My name is Patricia Edwards, and I'm just speaking because I have worked and talked with a lot of the terminated workers, and it is really unfair if you go to the emergency room, if you're sick, you have a doctor's note, the doctor tells you to take off for 2 days, it's still counted as an absence, and these workers are still being terminated. The other thing that's really unfair, as the other workers said, they are paying from $9 to $11 an hour. Now imagine if you're working somewhere and you go to get a raise after a year to 2 years and they say here's 5 to 50 cents an hour. So now instead of making $11 an hour, you're making $11.15 an hour, and you have to raise a family on that. Could you raise your family on that?
Thank you. Let's see where we are. Edwin Guzman?
Edwin Guzman here. Just to restate, I was here at the last meeting, and roughly 2 weeks later after that, I was fired by GCS, and that's really what's going on in the call center. MTA really does need to be involved, and so that things such as this do not keep happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hobbs, Celestial Hobbs?
My name is Celestial Hobbs. I work with GCS. It will be a year next month on the 24th. I was sent to the hospital on October 8th due to the bedbug situation. On the 9th, I had to call out of work. I had an excuse. On the 10th, I was due to come back to work, but they took my sick time, and I was calling out over an excused absence. I feel it is unfair, the treatment that I have received. I've been traumatized now due to the fact that I don't know if I will bring this situation into my home. And I do get paid $11 an hour, and that is, I mean, looking for a seat since 8:55 to 5:30 is very unfair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dylan Valle?
Good morning. My name is Dylan Valle. I am with the Transport Workers Union. I'm one of the lead organizers on the campaign. As one of the members brought to your attention, we really ask that you look at this contract and do your due diligence. We met with the Inspector General the other day, there are many violations of law that we believe we've been able to demonstrate, and if you review the contract and have the task force that you've assembled do the diligence, we think that you'll find that. Many workers come to work early to work just so that they can find a seat because there aren't enough seats, but then receive disciplinary actions when they log in late. And none of the hours that they are not logged in, even though they're on the premises, are paid unless a worker brings it to the manager's attention, and the manager then has the discretion to correct the ADP payroll. So we do have, you know, a really umbrella question. Many of the members ask us, and we sort of are baffled by it, and everyone we seem to approach doesn't really have an answer. And the one question is, how does a company like GCS propose a contract or make proposals to this board? Those proposals are reviewed, discussed, debated, vetted, signed, and then they don't have any obligation to implement anything that they've proposed. That's the question that we have. And we'd ask that the board answer that question. The task force maybe respond, and we're hoping that the Inspector General can respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keisha McFadden.
Hello, my name is Keisha McFadden. I've been employed with GCS for 8 months. During my time of employment, I have received bed bug bites. I brought home bed bugs. My house been inspected. They gave me a day off due to the bed bug situation. I know bed bugs is big in New York, but when you're working in the MTA building, I believe that's MTA's responsibility to help us clean it up so that we can work in a better place. Now, besides that, the point of this is we have a contract. Contract says, pay us $13, $14. We're getting 9. We're getting 11. Why? We don't have answers. Everything is handed back down to GCS. MTA issued out the contract. MTA issued out the contract. MTA should be held responsible to make sure that we get paid and get our equal rights. We are not in the 1920s. This is 2015. It'll be 2016 making $9 wages at $1,600 a month rent. Is that livable for me? No, but I will make it work. I have to, but I shouldn't. I took the job so I wouldn't get on welfare. I took the job because I needed it. I found out during my time on the job I was supposed to get paid more money, so I got involved. Being involved is to stand as a community to help one another. MTA is a big, big corporation, and we need your help. We're asking you, we are basically begging you to please open up the contract, look at it, hold GCS responsible for what they're doing to us, and ask them why you're not paying these people what they need to get paid, because we agreed on this when we gave you the money funded by the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Christian Smith.
My name is Christian Smith. With my other colleagues, I've been with GCS about 1.5 years. The working conditions there are just bad. You shouldn't have to be paid $9 to $11 an hour slaving, almost slaving basically, and you get treated like that. You have management issues. You have issues where you can have documentation that you were out, that you need to be out, and they still hold it against you. I am also in the process of them trying to terminate me, and I have documentation showing that I was out and I couldn't come in. And they tell me, okay, well, you're still held accountable for this. It's unjust. That should be a practice in nowhere for you to come into work and they tell you you're still in danger of something you had no control over. I'm hoping, I'm begging that they change things at GCS, because nobody should have to work under those conditions. Nobody should have to be trying to live off $9 to $11 an hour, because it's impossible. It really is impossible. You have to take up extra shifts or have no off days just to try and live and do a service that we provide the community through MTA. and we're getting paid less than what we're supposed to be paid. Well, I hope is that things change, because every time more and more people get fired and more and more people come in and they can't stay that long in that environment. You get sick there, or you bring on home the issues of the bed bugs. Personally, I had that issue, and I had to do something about it. Still trying to do something about it. I just hope that with us coming over and over, that things will change. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanna Jenkins?
All right, Robert Brown again. Here's the contract. I'm quite sure you guys have a copy of it. I just want to refer to the date, October the 8th, 2012. There's two major positions at GCS. One is reservations and customer service. On year one, they proposed $13.35 an hour just for reservationists. Year one, $13.85. It is going on 3 years now. The average person working at GCS makes $11.15. The new workers start off at $9. They want to extend this out for not just a 6-month probation period. They would love to extend it out to 12 months. Can you imagine that? Being a single parent, coming off welfare, trying to raise a family for 12 months under $9 an hour? That is almost unheard of. I mean, in America, that may be all right, but not in New York City when the cost of living is sky high. So when you get a chance, get a copy of this and just go to October 8th. Yes, we got disciplinary problems. Yes, we got issues of inconsideration that even though I'm sick or my child dies or something like that, I have to prove that my child died. I have to bring you the paperwork. And even then, it's still not considered. Yes, we have those discipline issues, but majority of it is just the discipline and the fair wages. It's here. It's evidence. They proposed it, and our question is, where's the money? We're struggling. Where's the money? I'm a single man, have a roommate, 40-something-year-old, never did that in my life, but because I can't afford to get my own apartment, you know, I can't even get in a relationship right now because I can't afford it right now. I got to be honest. Beautiful women, be honest. No, I can't even go out with you. Take me out because I can't afford it. I know it's funny, but it's serious. This hurts a man's heart. I mean, his character not being able to provide for himself, let alone a family. And I do want to have that privilege, just like most of you, to have a good family and be able to provide for them and give them what they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. We welcome all of your colleagues, but I have to advise you that it's a bad precedent for us if people are going to all yield their time to the same person. If Mr. Brown brought the Yankees, we'd have to give him an hour. So the last speaker is Gerald Montgomery. Mr. Montgomery.
I'm offended he didn't come fix my microphone. Good afternoon or morning, gentlemen. I actually wasn't here live for the last hearing, but I did see the video, and I want to thank you on behalf of my present GCS employees for your consideration and the way that you've looked into the matter, because it needs to be addressed. I worked for Global Contact Services for 3 years. I was there with the previous company, and I was wrongfully terminated, which has since been ratified by the New York State Labor Board. They thought it was frivolous. Everything that they say, it was happening. They fired me a year ago, about 3 weeks after the union election, and after I'd been awarded by the MTA for outstanding customer service. So everything that they say is true. GCS, Global Contact Services, has gone rogue, gentlemen. Okay, and they need to be reeled in, not just with the money, with the work conditions, with the personal skills of the management and the administration, because they are not equipped to actually supervise that operation in a professional manner. They didn't when I was there. Obviously, that still hasn't changed. So you guys are familiar with the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire of 1911 when the factory burned down because the fire exits were locked. And after that, a lot of issues were addressed with the company that was running the operation there about their sweatshop policies. Well, this is just a different year. The sweatshop policy still exists. Global Contact Services is practicing those freely on the taxpayer's dollar. Every time I swipe my MetroCard, we're paying off GCS to do these things. Thank you for your time, and I'm sure that you will look into it, because it's an election year. It might be a good time to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Thank you all. That concludes the public comment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Pelly?
if you recall, after these workers came last month, we did talk about the opportunity to provide a investigation or review of the contract and the working conditions. I know we have had conversations. Could you just bring us up to date on where that is, both for the board members and for the employees, so they understand how seriously we are taking these concerns?
Immediately following the meeting, last month's board meeting, the interim president of New York City Transit, Jim Farrar, got with head of audit Mike Facilli and the Inspector General Barry Kluger, and they began a due diligence review and more than that. It was our desire to come forward with those findings to the board in time for this cycle, but it's essential they do it right and look through everything, and they're making a commitment to do so before next cycle, and we will share that information with you. You've heard some of the comments because some of the employees there have seen us there, but we need to do it as quickly as possible and bring these matters to a head in terms of what actions we may need to take. Mr. Merdler?
Mr. Chairman, and this is directed particularly to counsel. In Goodstein against the City of New York, the Court of Appeals of the State of New York ruled that good faith is an inherent obligation of contract. I have heard enough today to demonstrate, to my view, that there is no good faith on the part of this vendor. The pay situation is illegal if it is as represented by them. The working conditions are intolerable. You need to have a detailed report of every person who has been fired or terminated in the last year, and every member of this board ought to get a copy of that contract, because at the next meeting, absent some indication from the Inspector General, I will move to terminate it.
Now we'll move on with the meeting. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the October board meeting. Today we'll be voting to approve a $26.1 billion capital program covering MTA capital projects from years 2015 to 2019. And I'm sure by now you've heard that New York State has committed $8.3 billion and New York City has committed $2.5 billion. The remainder will come from federal sources, bonds, and our own efficiencies as we continue the most aggressive cost-cutting in MTA history. I'm extremely grateful and relieved that New York City and the state came together to provide this essential funding. It's great news for all New Yorkers, our customers, and all of the constituents of the elected officials in every corner of the state. Because it's not just about the services that the MTA provides down here, it's about the goods and services that are provided and paid for that support employment in other parts of the state. This is a region that accounts for 11% of the nation's gross domestic product, and it's a region that simply would not exist without the transportation network. I came back to the MTA in 2009 as president of New York City Transit, and one of the reasons I did was the fact that the state, the legislature, and the city have always been able to come forward to get the funding that the MTA needs to do its critical capital work. And this capital program is no exception. In fact, it marks the largest investment in MTA history, infrastructure. And later in the meeting, Craig Stewart will join me for a detailed presentation about that program as we seek board approval so we can submit it again to the Capital Program Review Board. But before that, let me just say these investments are essential to renew, enhance, and expand the system. They'll create hundreds of thousands of jobs, they'll fuel our region's $1.4 trillion economy, and allow us to remain good stewards of the $1 trillion asset we have. That's the scale of the asset we're working with out there, and it's an asset our region simply couldn't live without. Last, I would like to make sure that you've all heard that we recently lost a beloved member of the MTA family. Virgil Conway, who served as MTA chairman from 1995 to 2001 and is an MTA board member, passed away late last week. Outside the MTA, Virgil was an attorney, a banker, and a philanthropist. Here, he was hugely influential and effective chairman. He helped Governor Pataki's Master Links Plan, draft it, which for the first time in history committed the state to our East Side Access and Second Avenue subway projects. He oversaw the rollout of MTA's MetroCard, and he implemented fare discounts and eliminated two-fare zones, dramatically reducing the average cost of a ride. He will be sorely missed, and I'd like to take a moment of silence in his honor. Thank you. The minutes of the September meeting have been distributed to all members. Are there any corrections, omissions, or errors that people want to make? If not, could I have a motion to approve? Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Committee on Finance. I chaired the Committee on Finance this month. There are 5 procurement actions this month in the total amount of $7.795 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. There are 4 competitive procurements totaling $5.996 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. There is a ratification in the amount of $1.8 million. The committee recommends the ratification, and I move it. Second? Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. There is 1 real estate action item described on page 45 through 47 in the board book distributed for this meeting, and the committee recommends this real estate item, and I move it. Second? Comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. That concludes the Finance Committee report. Mr. Ferrer, Transit and Bus Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Transit and Bus Committee met on Monday and reports the following. There are 4 procurement actions this month in the total amount of $147.9 million. There's 1 non-competitive procurement in the amount of $23 million for New York City Transit. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
There are 2 competitive procurements in the total amount of $124 million for New York City Transit. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second. Comments, questions? All in favor?
And there is 1 ratification in the amount of $900,000 for New York City Transit. The committee recommends this ratification, and I move it.
Second. Comments and questions? All in favor? Aye.
And that concludes the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Farrar. The next is a report from Metro North's Chair, Mr. Sador.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Metro North Committee met this month, and I report the following. There are 4 procurement actions in a total amount of $4.88 million. There is 1 non-competitive procurement in the amount of $4.5 million. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Second.
Second.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
There are 2 competitive procurements totaling $295,000. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second.
Second.
Comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
There is 1 ratification for $93,000. The committee recommends this ratification, and I move it.
Second. Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
This concludes the report of the Metro North Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Sador. The Long Island Railroad Committee report, Mr. Pally.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Long Island Railroad Committee met this month, and I report the following. There are 5 procurement actions in the total amount of $8.48 million. There are 3 non-competitive procurements totaling $4.66 million for the Long Island Railroad. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second. Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. There is 1 competitive procurement in the amount of $860,000 for the Long Island Railroad. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Second. Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. There is 1 ratification for MTA Capital Construction totaling $2.5 million. The committee recommends this ratification, and I move it.
Second. Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. This concludes the report, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pally, thank you. The Bridge and Tunnel Committee report, Mr. Capelli.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Bridges and Tunnels Committee met this month and report the following. There are 3 procurement action items this month in the total amount of $12.139 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. The 3 competitive procurements in the total amount of $12.139 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second.
Second.
Comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
There are no ratifications, and this includes our Bridges and Tunnels report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Capelli. We now have a special presentation on the 2015 through 19 capital program, as I discussed earlier, and Craig Stewart will join me in making the presentation, and then certainly, I'm sure we'll be in an engaged dialogue by any questions or comments any of the board members may have. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, excuse me. Thank you for the opportunity to present the 2015 to 19 capital plan. I'm joined today by two members of my staff, Mr. Steve Barang, the Director of Capital Program Management, and Stephanie Delisle, Director of Capital Funding. Next page, please. Today I will start with an overview that reflects the strategy behind the development of the capital program. Then we will look at how we will work to make this program an even better program through efficiencies and other initiatives. Then I will highlight some of the changes since the September 14 proposal. Steve Barang will detail the agency by agency capital program, and finally Stephanie Delisle will wrap it up with a review of the funding. Turning to the new 2015 to 19 capital program proposal, we built investments around three strategic objectives: to renew the existing assets, to enhance the existing system, and to expand the reach of the MTA system. This slide shows a comparison of the board-approved September 2014 program and the revised proposal presented today. Starting with the core and renew building blocks of safety and reliability provide the foundation of our investment program. The lower half of the core consists of the enhanced building blocks, which are our system improvement and customer experience projects. These help the MTA deliver better service and more service. The lower portion includes an additional $4.5 billion for network expansion. These projects allow us to address capacity constraints and the needs of the regional economy. Taken together, renew, enhance, and expand building blocks total $29 billion for the new proposal. In July, the governor issued a challenge to us to look for efficiencies and to deliver the program benefits at a lower cost. The chairman asked the MTA agencies and staff to review the proposed program with an eye towards implementing efficiencies towards a cost reduction and savings of 6 to 8%. As we look forward to the 2015 to 19, we are working even harder to make this our best capital program yet. It starts with how we invest our dollars. We will use more alternative delivery methods. We will partner with the private sector to leverage shared benefits through strategies such as design, build, and other alternative delivery methods. Each agency has reviewed the program and to date has identified 38 design build projects across the MTA, and we will identify more. With the expansion of the component program launched in 2010 to 14, we're targeting just the components of those assets that need to be replaced so we can deliver benefits more quickly to those locations. This approach will be used in stations, in power, in structures, and in depots. We will work closely with the contracting community to ensure early involvement, to share risk appropriately, and we will update our contract terms and conditions. We will continue to work closely with our labor unions to achieve better results. We will continue to work to improve track access. Following the lessons from previous experience, such as Montague Street Tube shutdown, as well as the Greenpoint Tube, which allowed us to take advantage of track outages to make improvements in areas at a lower cost. We will apply new design standards learned from the Superstorm Sandy and build resilient where we need to. We will use project labor agreements where applicable, and we will use new technology to build smarter. We will continue our transparency and accountability initiatives, such as our capital program dashboard and the independent engineering consultant. We will perform more risk assessments to help mitigate cost increases and schedule slippages. We will extend the useful life of our assets and improve the performance of our assets through enterprise asset management. We will apply these and other approaches to achieve $3 billion in efficiencies to effect a 10% reduction from the original proposed 2015 to 19 plan. Looking at the highlights of some of the program changes, some projects were swapped in and out on a like-for-like basis, such as the 6th Avenue Communications-Based Train Control Project, which was replaced with the 8th Avenue CBTC project. This change was driven by service plans to support Sandy work for the Canarsie 2. Some projects of opportunity were eliminated because of the other changes in the program, such as the swap mentioned above, the 6th Avenue CBTC being swapped for the 8th Avenue CBTC. A number of projects were taking advantage of track outages on the 6th Avenue. Tunnel lighting, interlocking, and power upgrade work. All of this work has been deferred, and funding was reinvested into a CBTC project on the Culver line, which will make 3 CBTC projects in this capital program. The design and construction schedule of 2nd Avenue Subway Phase 2 has changed to reflect the amount of work that can be performed in the 2015 to 19 program period. It was determined that after preliminary engineering that some of the projects were no longer needed during the 2015 to 19 period. An example of this is the painting work on the Whitestone Bridge. It was discovered that we could defer it for another 5 years, and this will be reprogrammed in a future program. The plan, as originally presented to the board in 2014, was based on estimates at that time. A year has passed, engineering has progressed, costs have changed, some up and some down. Either legislative or safety needs have created a requirement for new projects or increases to existing mandated projects. Capacity improvements driven by economic growth and New York City development goals have led to improvements such as new entrances and service expansion studies. This diagram it shows the project changes and reflects the anticipated efficiencies of the next program. I'm going to turn it over to Steve to give you the agency by agency breakdown. Steve?
Thank you, Craig. I'm going to begin by going through each agency. We have a slide on efficiencies as well as a slide on some of the details for each agency. This is a picture of the Smith and 9th Street station that was opened up in 2013 through the 10 to 14 program after renewal. The turnstiles that you see here will be refreshed in the 15 to 19 plan through new fare payment system to enable smart card and mobile phone payment technology. New York City Transit plans to achieve $1.3 billion of efficiency in this program. Some of the examples are on the screen there. Coordination of CBTC work with other right-of-way work, using alternative procurement such as design build for the Jamaica bus depot, which will allow us to deliver benefits faster for less cost, and expanding the component approach from stations to other asset classes such as line structures, power, elevators, escalators, shops, and depots. New York City Transit has a $15.8 billion program, 82% of which is being invested in state of good repair investments. The proposed rolling stock purchases for transit dominate this program. We will be buying 940 R211 cars, which are slated to replace the R46 cars. The R46 cars, when the last one rolls off the property, will be approaching 50 years of age. We will, in addition to this, be replacing the entire fleet on the Staten Island Railway. We also will be purchasing $1 billion worth of buses. This will buy approximately 1,400 buses, including CNG buses, electric hybrid buses, standard clean diesel buses, and articulated buses. As Craig mentioned earlier, Transit anticipates introducing CBTC on 3 lines in this program, Queens Boulevard line, 6th Avenue line, and the Culver line. This will increase our CBTC track miles from 52 for the L line and the 7 line to 125. This is an increase of 150% in our CBTC track miles. New York City Transit will be investing in 170 stations in this program. 20 of those will be renewal, and 150 stations will benefit from component investment. We're going to make a major reconfiguration of the Times Square shuttle. It will go from a 3-track configuration to 2-track configuration, and will be ADA accessible as well. We will be making fulfilling our key station commitment. We will be doing the final 11 stations of our key station program in this program. In addition, we will be adding 7 non-key stations, so a total of 18 additional stations will be accessible in this program. And as mentioned earlier, we will be extending components from stations to a variety of other asset classes. Moving on to Long Island Railroad, this is a picture of the Atlantic Avenue Viaduct project that was completed in the 10 to 14 program. It was highlighted by the MTA's independent engineering contractor consultant as a very good example of an extremely successful design-build project. All phases were completed ahead of schedule and within budget. The remainder of this initiative on Atlantic Avenue branch will be completed in the 15 to 19 program with the renovation of the Nostrand Avenue station. Long Island Railroad anticipates about $300 million of efficiencies. Some examples of how they plan to achieve these efficiencies include partnering with municipalities and private developers to reduce costs, such as was done for the Wyandanch parking facility, which you see here in the picture. They will implement midday station closures for stations that they are renovating, such as Nostrand, Babylon, and Hunters Point, to streamline construction activities and provide benefits for customers sooner. And they will maximize piggybacking opportunities where possible, for example, for signal projects on the Babylon and Ronkonkoma branch. The proposed Long Island capital program is $2.8 billion. A large share of this will continue the rolling stock and track capacity investments that will be begun in the 10 to 14 program, and they will complete the replacement of the M3 fleet, the mainline double track, and continued Jamaica capacity improvements. To complement the nearly $500 million in track capacity improvements, Long Island Railroad will invest another $350 million to continue the state of good repair of existing track assets, bringing the overall track investment category to $850 million. They will finish off positive train control with funding in this program. We will advance communication work and signal component upgrades. We will make investments to further the Long Island Railroad's long-term migration to centralized train control. It has money for a new fare payment pilot. It has money for station components. It will do station renewals, as mentioned earlier, at Nostrand Avenue, Hunters Point, and Babylon. We will construct a new station in Elmhurst, and we will design a new station at Republic. The balance of Long Island's proposed program is a variety of state of good repair investments. Moving on to Metro North, which rounds out our commuter rail program. This photo shows Grand Central Terminal, which is the centerpiece of Metro North's network. The 2010 to 14 capital program included over $100 million investment at Grand Central, including a variety of structural and station component work. Included in the 15 to 19 program is the replacement of the large train information boards, which you can see on the right-hand side of the photo. Metro North applied, or plans to apply, $200 million of efficiencies in this program. Some examples of that will include using a design-build approach for Harmon Shop improvements. Excuse me. They will expand their use of components to other asset categories, such as undergrade bridges. And they will, like Long Island, will do coordination of right-of-way work, including at Grand Central and other right-of-way work. The Metro North capital program, as proposed, is $2.3 billion. 84% of this capital program is devoted to state of good repair. The program is dominated by 2 key projects, one of which is the replacement of its M3 fleet, and the other of which is the final phase of Harmon Shop. Harmon Shop supports 80% of New York State east of Hudson Metro North repair activities. Other significant, these 2 projects by themselves represent almost half of Metro North's program. Other significant investments include a down payment on what will be a $1 billion investment in Grand Central over the next 20 years of $139 million, continued state of good repair investments in track bridges and tunnels, improving communication at Grand Central. Like Long Island, Metro North will make some initial investments in pilots for a new fare payment system. They will finish off positive train control. And they will make signal investments on the Upper Hudson Line. They will make station investments on the Lower Harlem Line stations. And the balance of the program is a variety of state of good repair investments. Moving on to MTA Bus, which MTA Bus complements our New York City transit bus operations within the 5 boroughs. This is a picture of a bus that was purchased in the 00 to 04 program. These buses are reaching the end of their useful life, and we anticipate replacing many of them in the 15 to 19 program. Efficiencies at Metro MTA Bus that are planned will hopefully save $60 million. These include expansion of the component approach, coordination of various contracting and procurement opportunities, utilization of life extension techniques, and application of standard specifications to reduce procurement costs. MTA Bus's program is not surprisingly dominated by the purchase of buses. They are buying 345 new buses. Nearly 300 of those are high-capacity express buses, and 53 of those are articulated buses, which will be used for the BRT route on Woodhaven Boulevard. The balance of the program includes previous mentioned custom information systems and component depot repairs. The last of our operating agencies is Bridges and Tunnels. This image depicts the RFK Bridge, which dates back to 1936 and is the oldest of Bridges and Tunnels crossings. In the 15 to 19 program, nearly $750 million of investments are planned at this facility. This includes Phase 1 replacement of the Manhattan Toll Plaza, construction of a new Harlem River Drive ramp, and other improvements to strengthen the bridge against seismic and wind activities. Bridges and Tunnels achieved plans to achieve $200 million of efficiencies, and they are doing that by application of design-build. They are doing 17 design-build projects, or anticipate doing 17 design-build projects in this program. They've applied efficiency savings from the 6th program to 15 to 19 structural work, and they are going to improve their coordination of lane closures to minimize disruption on their bridges. The Bridges and Tunnels program, as proposed, is $2.9 billion. The plan focuses on rehabilitating structures. The previous program had a 19% level of structural investment. This program has 35%. Structural work includes a $160 million investment on the Throgs Neck Bridge approach. There's a roadway and deck project at Throgs Neck for $310 million. And there's going to be an initial reconstruction of the RFK Bridge Manhattan Toll Plaza, as mentioned earlier. Also includes some enhancements, most notably a ramp linking the RFK Bridge with the northbound Harlem River Drive. This was done in coordination with our partners at the City of New York. B&T will also be doing a variety of other state of good repair investments on its bridges and its tunnels. We complete the agency section with our expansions projects. This shows the new station entrance for the extension of the number 7 line to 34th Street. This was supported by the funds from the City of New York, and it will help spur development and revitalization on the west side of Manhattan. It is also an example of innovative financing and transit-oriented development. The network expansion projects are critical. They underpin our ability to meet changing regional travel demands and demographics. This ability to adapt to ridership changes helps to promote increased regional economic activity. The MTACC capital program, as proposed, totals $4.5 billion. It includes 3 major projects. It will finish the funding for East Side Access and regional investments. That's the $2.9 billion you see in the first column. It will initiate 2nd Avenue Subway Phase 2 by funding environmental design work, some initial real estate purchases, some initial utility relocation, and launch box prep. And it will fund Penn Station access, the construction of the right-of-way assets, track, power, signal, communication, as well as 4 stations. and in the Bronx. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Stephanie, who will take us through the funding.
Thanks, Steve. Well, the funding landscape for the program has also changed significantly since MTA's original proposal for 2015 to 2019 was presented to the MTA Board last year. Most notably, the funding gap for our proposed program of work has been reduced to zero. So just to recap, in terms of the chronology of funding events since September 2014, earlier this year, the governor's executive budget included $1 billion as a contribution to support MTA's capital program. Then, over the summer, as indicated in the July preliminary financial plan, MTA identified additional resources to provide $2.4 billion more in bonds and pay-go for 15 to 19. Subsequent to that, the state of New York committed to an additional $7.3 billion for the total contribution of $8.3 billion you see on the funding chart. And the city of New York increased its contribution to the proposed program by $1.8 billion, from the $700 million previously assumed to $2.5 billion, which is comprised of approximately $1.9 billion in direct city sources and $600 million in alternative tax levy revenue sources. I'd also like to highlight that the other MTA sources line shown here still assumes bonding of the PMT, which we anticipate achieving. And as stated previously, the funding for BNT's capital program is reduced to reflect $200 million in savings they've generated, which also has the added benefit of additional support for the transit and commuter portions of the program. So with that, as we see here, the funding gap for the revised capital program proposal for 15 to 19 is now $0. Craig? Turn the mic.
Slide. Should the board approve the program today, we will submit the program to the State Capital Program Review Board in November, and they have 30 days to act. If they don't act, it is automatically approved. Thank you.
Before we turn it over to discussion or comments or questions any of the board members may have, while the discussion with the governor was going on about the $8.3 billion that the state was going to commit, as Craig referenced, there was an initial requirement that we look at driving efficiencies, driving costs out of the program through efficiencies, and that was the 6 to 8%. The dialogue has continued because while the underpinning of a capital program is renew, enhance, and expand, we need to look at new delivering strategies so that we can deliver this program faster, cheaper, and better. The governor wants it to be customer-facing so the customers understand exactly what they're getting for the dollars they're spending, and they can see real-time results with respect to those improvements occurring. And we need to do so in a way where they have a sense of ownership. There are a number of other items, but probably the most notable one of which is the introduction and technology, not for the sake of technology, technology for the sake of a more efficient system and ability to deliver an enhanced product. We live in a point in time where we're drastically removed from where the system was originally built at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, where technology was in its most basic forms. And what some people considered to be at one point in time a luxury, others considered to be an entitlement and a necessity. And so he has asked, if not directed us, to make sure that we apply technology where we can deliver the project, deliver the program faster, better, and with a more enhanced product for the customers. Now I'd like to open it up to any comments or questions board members may have. Drew.
Something that I noticed in this presentation that I haven't seen before was the inclusion of the Junius Livonia link, something I've been advocating and Transit Writers Council has been advocating for a long time, so congratulations on adding that. The program looks extremely balanced, balanced by region, balanced by expansion versus maintenance versus safety, and I congratulate everybody who's been involved in the making of this, as well as our funding partners.
Thank you, Andrew. That particular connection has been part of a dialogue that the city and the MTA has had over a number of years, and there's recognition that if there's going to be development out there, we need to be able to provide enhanced connectivity to the system. So that was jointly pursued over a number of years, but we have it in a program now.
And as you know, that's one of the last places that lines cross but aren't connected.
I walked that connection in 1982. It was a lot different then.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Tom. I think I would just like to take a minute to say on behalf of the city, obviously we are really glad we've reached this, I think, a very historic deal. It is, unprecedented financial commitment from the city and from the state. It's going to be terrific for all our riders in this entire region. And I also want to particularly thank some of your team here, Craig and Stephanie and Stephen. They were terrific to work with. And just to speak to Andrew's point, we're very pleased and grateful, in addition to just the overall investments of, in the area of $16 billion in terms of New York City Transit and Bus, we were able to get, as things moved around in the plan, some priorities there were very important to the city. Some of the things we had outlined in our One New York plan, which had included Livonia Junius, had included a number of other station improvements, looking at some of the work along Utica Avenue, North Shore BRT, 2nd Avenue. Also, we're very pleased that the MTA is now going to be able to install CBTC on 3 lines. That's going to have, a huge impact on riders all over the city. So, once again, I think we're very, very pleased with, I think, what is now a very nice partnership with the city and the state, and a very terrific capital plan.
Thank you, Polly. Mr. Capelli?
Yes. Last year when we adopted the plan, I had raised questions about a couple of things, and if you could just spell out where we are at with them. One is the North Shore BRT, the second is the Mid-Hudson Rail Yard, and the third was the Long Island Second Rail Project, which I believe will have some funding in this proposal.
There is a commitment for the second phase of second track main line for Long Island Railroad. West of Hudson Midpoint Yard, there's money for, I believe, environmental and some property acquisition. And North Shore BRT, it's environmental. Want to elaborate on that, Greg?
North Shore BRT, there's environmental, which we believe will take about 3 to 4 years, and design funding.
Okay, and once, and is that capable, is there the possibility that we could move that timetable along and move on to acquisition during this program?
If we get through the environmental process and the design such that we need to do property acquisition, we could come back and have a modification to the program, an amendment to the program to deal with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Kay?
Just a few questions on the funding chart. The federal funding chart, I think, had, what, $6 billion from the federal government? How likely is that to be achieved? Are we...
That's historical. Basically, that's what we've gotten in past years. Stephanie, do you want to say anything more?
Yes, it keeps relatively flat the amounts that we received in recent history. Of course, we await reauthorization to know for certain how much more, how that might change, but we feel this is at least reasonable as a minimum amount to expect for planning purposes.
Right. At what point during the plan, I guess, devil's always in the details, and we've done, you guys have done an extraordinary amount of work getting our partners, or several leaders of our partners, on board with the size and the need of the plan. And we've heard a lot about how it's going to be directed to the MTA, and it'll be bondable, I guess. Unclear exactly how the money's going to come. And so I guess I question what stopgaps, what measures do we have in place to prevent us from either spending or issuing contracts if, in fact, A, the federal money doesn't come in, or B, the state money or city money comes in a way that, frankly, is not risk-free to the MTA. We've seen this before. This is not new, right? I mean, we've seen state aid and city aid come in different ways. In the last capital plan, the city was able to provide the subsidy for the 7-line extension in one manner. The state, through the years, have provided it in many different ways, in some cases, whether it was through real estate taxes and forced the MTA to bond it, which, as we know, sort of left us holding the bag, or either money directly. So the devil's in the details. I really believe that. I think we're probably 75% there, maybe more. I leave that, it's your judgment, Chairman. But I think work really still needs to be done, and I think we have to be extra diligent. The last thing we want is for us to take a risk, and we're really not sure where the state, the city, and the federal aid's coming from. So I guess, what time frame do we need before we hit that mark where we're taking a risk?
Let me start it, and then I'll let the staff go to greater level of detail. In some ways, we're in a very similar position to where we've been in prior capital programs. In other ways, we're different. We've never had a capital program approved at the first day of the capital program. It's generally been about 6 months. We're now about 10 months. We're a little bit behind. We've had less surety, though, on commitments of funding than we have right now. Surety in the sense of commitments being made, actual sources of that funding still yet to be determined. But in the last capital program, we had an agreed-to scope. Funding certain for 2 years, had to come back the following year for the funding for the remaining 3 years. So the way we're approaching this is from a standpoint of we have risks with the federal dollars.
Right.
We have to come to closure with what are the exact sources of money that the city brings to the table and the state brings to the table, and that'll be part of the legislative process in 2016.
Maybe, right? I guess that's
Pardon
the
me?
question. Does it need to be solved in 16? Can it be pushed to 17? How much money do
Well,
we have? I know you don't want to answer that in the wrong way, but I think it's important for us to know when we
Yes.
actually need them to act.
Yes, but I liken this to running a steeplechase. And if you know steeplechase races, they have different hazards. And if you want to win a steeplechase, you walk the course ahead of time so you know what the hazards are. But when you actually start the steeplechase, I just know this from experience, you have to concentrate on the hazard that's in front of you, because if you lose that hazard, you lose the race. So first we have to get it approved by the board, then we submit it to CPRB, and we need CPRB approval. If we don't get CPRB approval in a timely way, we are really in a tough spot because we can't spend the dollars that we're bringing to the table.
Right.
If we get CPRB approval, we have access to the $14 billion, some or a little bit less of money that we can start spending and awarding contracts,
On our
keeping
own.
the program going. Yes,
Based on funding
correct.
on our own, right.
Right. Now, where the risk there occurs is, ideally, you like to do renew, state of good repair first before you do enhance, and certainly
Right.
enhance before you do expand. But we'll have to use some reasoned judgment there. And it'll be incumbent upon us to make sure where we're taking those risks, we're communicating that to the board when we're awarding contracts. But this is a very strong commitment that the governor and the mayor have made. This was a fairly challenging process, but we got to an end game. But we will have to watch it to that degree, and we'll have to make sure, as we're making these awards, we're communicating to you what those risks are.
I appreciate that, and as you know, I know you can appreciate the details are very, very important. And, you know, everyone's got out and said the big, great stuff, we're going to do this, and then people like myself at some point earlier in my career sat in a back room and figured out ways to do it. That wasn't always, you know, not always as hard locked box as you would think. And so I really want to make sure the MTA is extremely diligent, and as I know you will be, to make sure that this money is for real. This money, if we're forced to borrow against, is for real and won't disappear. And I think there's still a lot more hard work to be done here. So I think it's great we got to this point. I'm sure it wasn't easy to get two out of, you know, a bunch of the leaders. I'm still not sure where everyone else fits, but I think you've got a great commitment. I think it's great. I just want to make sure that we continue to protect ourselves from a risk out there.
I mean, some of the things we have put on paper that we're going to do will come to fruition, others won't, which reinforces why where we think we can save money, we need to go beyond that, because there are going to be overages in other places or approaches won't work. The importance of bonding against the PMT is pretty important, because if you don't bond against it at all, there's $500 million at risk. If you can bond against the portion that's in the city, that's about $400 million. But those are the types of risks we need to make sure we communicate to you as we're taking actions, and we will. That's the advantage of actually we're going to go through a budget review in November and approval of an operating budget in December and the mid-year budget review, because we keep the two tied together. Any other questions? Neil?
Tom, I wanted just a couple of things. One, thank you for your leadership during this time frame. I'm one of the newer board members, and having not witnessed this before, I was blown away by your leadership as being the leader of all of the MTA, all the areas of the riders and the stakeholders that participate. I thought your leadership during that process was exemplary, and thank you for that. I do want to, and towards your point about support for this campaign, I do want to throw into the mix the view of at least the Metro North riders of this campaign. Those riders think about three things. They think about safety, both the perception of safety and the reality of safety. They think about service. Is it reliable? Is it sufficient? And price. They think about, does it make sense from a value standpoint relative to alternatives? Looking through the Metro North plan, I would say that you satisfy all three of those requirements, whether PTC and all the efforts towards state of good repair. On the service side, the replacement activities, certainly the communications piece, I think, is particularly passionately advocated for by riders. And on price, I think the effort you've done on a cost-saving standpoint is material and meaningful, and we thank you. So on behalf of the riders, I say that from Metro North at least, we're very much appreciative of what you're doing.
Thank you, Neil.
First, Tom, I want to congratulate you and the staff, Craig Johnson and his staff especially. I think what you did was a magnificent job. I've been around a long time on transit issues, and as chairman, you showed great leadership. You managed to get a lot of people on board, a lot of interest groups in New York City on board, singing the same tune, that we need the capital program that's critical to our region. I think that helped get the governor and the mayor on board at levels that are unprecedented. The city's contribution is unprecedented. We had some help with that. My hat's off to Gene Rushinoff. He did ask the Independent Budget Office to do a study, which came out the city should contribute more, but the city is contributing more than I had imagined. They contribute, and I want to congratulate the mayor for that. The governor stepped up, but I don't think that would have happened without your leadership, so I want to thank you for that. I think there are some challenges ahead generally, things you have told us in the briefs, things that are in the book that you've told us in the briefings, that we're going to do things, we're going to save money by doing things, and some of the things we're going to do is impact passengers in a different way. In some ways, it might be better because of the way our ridership is restructuring itself. But people should be prepared that they may not pay a lot more at the fare box, they'll pay more at the fare box, but not for the capital program, but they may pay in time. We're going to have situations, we're going to have closed stations or more inconvenience, but I think in the long run, it may be better. So that's something that you have my support on. I know that I've heard complaints about the Long Island Railroad, the Huntington Branch, Port Jefferson combined, the quality of service there. I'm hoping I see that there's at least some effort to start to try to put a yard out there. I want to just mention that publicly because that's a sore point for the people over there. Anyway, just like to conclude, congratulations. I don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
Mr. Schwartz, and then we'll come back to you, Susan.
Tom, just a quick question. I think I heard about, just wanted clarification, the 4 proposed Metro North stations in the Bronx, are they part of the capital plan?
Yes, that's the Penn Access for Metro North, and it's, I think, $695 million for stations, power tracking signals.
Right. So work for those 4 stations
Yes.
are in there. Thank you.
Yes. Susan?
I'm sure everyone knows that I'm very thankful to see the Port Jervis Midpoint Yard and passing sidings getting a start in this program. I want to thank all of the board members who supported my position on this, the hard work that Metro North went to, and also the many transit advocates and elected officials that came together. I very much appreciate that the governor and the mayor put so much money in and at the same time saw to it that the transit-deprived counties that don't have as much money in the pot were not neglected. I think all of us know that it's not everything we wanted, but it's a good balance and a good start. I do want to remind the board of one thing. The vast majority of the money is going to state of good repair and a kind of new thing, which is keeping up with technology, which we have to do. You've heard me talk about infrastructure constraining the ability to provide transit. We represent a region that's growing, a population that's growing, and we're going to have to grow with it. That means a lot of money needs to be put into it. The elected officials did an incredible job of coming together on this program. I appreciate it, and I hope it's the beginning of being able to continue the investment. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to also congratulate you and the staff on a tremendous job, and the governor and the mayor for coming together. Just 2 things relating to the Long Island piece. Obviously, we are tremendously pleased with the financing for the completion of Second Track. That project by itself will do more to help more riders on the Long Island Railroad than almost anything other than Jamaica, which is also in the plan. And the work that we're going to do to try to finally disentangle that. I'm also very pleased that the Long Island Railroad and MTA are stepping up for their share of funding to help Penn Station. I always like the fact that Grand Central is always on the front page of the Metro North, but for some reason Penn Station is not on the front page of the Long Island, and we can see the distinction there, but we are finally stepping up with some of our own money in that regard. Pallet, whatever it is. One thing I wanted to add to what Ira said on the complaints that we get on the Huntington and Port Jefferson branch because of the service that some people believe is inadequate. Now is your chance to step up. We have put $211 million in the plan for a new yard. Without a yard, you can't improve service. The problem, of course, is it now is dependent upon the municipalities involved in that area to find us land for a yard. Because it's their responsibility to work with MTA to provide the land and acreage necessary on that line to locate such a yard. Because without the land, the money is nice, but it's not going anywhere if we don't have a spot in which we can do it. So for those people on the Huntington and Port Jefferson branches who have been yelling for increased service, now is your chance to put your land where our money is. Because we're providing the money, now you have to provide the land and make this happen. I'm hopeful that will happen. My conversations with the county executive indicate clearly he wants to have it happen, and he's very appreciative of the money that we have put out there, but it's dependent upon everybody in that area coming together and saying, now's the time for improved Long Island Railroad service, and to do that, we have to make this significant capital investment. I am hopeful we will get to that point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm hopeful too, because when I was president of Long Island Railroad in 1999, the dialogue started on that yard.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First of all, congratulations. My greatest respect for you. I started working on the issue of increased capital infrastructure for Staten Island transportation probably a decade and a half ago, and was involved in the ping pong between the mayor and the governor, back and forth, trying to get both sides to agree on doing something that would relieve the pain of 500,000 transportation starved citizens of Staten Island, which eventually led to my being appointed to the board and having conversations with each of the chairs and or CEOs, executive directors, initially asking the question, if not now, then when? Okay, I had that conversation with you. I had the conversation with Joe, with their predecessors to the extent, and we got different answers. And I thought and I hoped that you would be the one that would ease our pain. And I'm very thankful that you are, and thankful to Governor Cuomo for getting the ball started on something so critical to the citizens of Staten Island. And as you explained to me and convincing me that this was the way to go several years ago with the fungibility aspect of bus rapid transit, you know, it's not just the North Shore corridor that I'm looking at. It's the whole reshaping of a transit system that's going to have to serve between 500,000 and 750,000 people over the next century. And we really need to make that footprint for it. So this is a really great day for mass transit in Staten Island, and I'm thankful to the City of New York for putting up their big chunk of money. It's nice to see that. I would hope that as the year goes on, the city will get behind the efforts to move this project quicker. Because it is critical, and there are a lot of components to that. We can't wait 25 years to build this out. The North Shore is just going to collapse with the new wheel and the outlet malls and the ever-increasing congestion, and I believe it serves this mayor's goal of increasing mass transit and making pedestrian safer, and so forth. So I would hope that during the next 2 years, we can accelerate the time schedule and begin some acquisition and some solid pieces of that. But the goal was to get in the budget, and we hadn't been able to do that ever. And so we are in, and now I'm looking forward to, I can give up my extra innings that I have on this board with at least a sense of relief that something substantial is going to come out of it, and for that I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Capelli. Mr. Merdler.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you for your leadership. But for that leadership, we would still be wallowing in the mud. I thank you for it. I also thank the governor for a particular effort, and that is the one that Mr. Schwartz referred to about the 4 stations in the Bronx. And while I am on that parochial kick, let me also call to your attention that we need to do something to move Borough President Diaz's program forward for improving the subway stations in the borough, using existing funding to do it. And I would urge you as strongly as I know how to take advantage of that with dispatch.
John?
I just want to weigh in and particularly just briefly thank you, Tom, for your leadership and watching you perform under these circumstances is extraordinary to watch. I also just want to thank the governor for not only his leadership, but his commitments, and the mayor for his commitments. It's been extraordinary to watch this develop and come together, and I look forward to helping one way or another with particularly some of the new ways of doing business, the increased design build and perhaps P3s. Could be very exciting times at the MTA. And again, thank you.
Farrar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a former congressman who pointed out that every important statement has been made, but not everybody has made it. So let me not disappoint, and say some of what has been said before. But before I do that, there is something in this capital plan. It's this extraordinary capital plan that should cheer just about every community of the riding and using public in this region. There were no major, even minor omissions that should concern us. This is an extraordinary plan, and it I think reflects really well not only on our planning staff but also on our executive leadership, because it was a test, and you acknowledged it many times, I know privately, Mr. Chairman, that test of a chair is getting a plan through. And this is the biggest and most ambitious that the MTA has put through. You ought to be personally very proud of it, and so should your team. I want to commend especially the leadership of the governor. For a car guy, he has proven that he cares and understands this system of mass transit unlike any other. The mayor's stepping up was absolutely essential to making this move forward. But the riders and the advocates and other people who are interested in the health of this region, all making common cause, gave us the propulsion we need. I'm cheered by a number of specific things in this plan, but I'm satisfied that we have a good blueprint for moving forward in the next 4 years, not only to make our system safer and more reliable and expand it in important ways, but to integrate important communication networks that had previously not been knit together in this region. the 4 stations in the Metro North, Penn Access, as we now know it, is an example of that. But there are many others in this plan. So, Mr. Chairman, I couldn't be prouder of your personal strength in this very trying process. It must not have been comfortable being you for a long part of this. But then, of course, everybody else played a role. And we can all be proud of that role. We can all be proud of the system we leave behind and our stewardship of a system that we'll see grow and improve in material ways, maybe not in the next year or two, but we will certainly leave it much better to our children and grandchildren, and that's our job, to leave it better. So thank you.
A number of you contributed throughout this process. You'd pick up the phone, you'd call me, you'd be off record, you'd be on record, you were giving me wise, sage advice, and I appreciate that. I also need to thank the staff because they did an excellent job. I think we've improved the documentation and what we have now, so you can see if you compare this, not to be critical of the first capital program, 6 capital programs ago, but they did an excellent job. I'll just leave you with one thought, and for those of you that have had the benefit and the joy of having an addition to your family through birth, you know, at the front end of that process, you're looking at the birth, you're looking at that actual birthing day. And then the realization hits about 2 days before that that's not the end, that's the start of something. That's something that you're going to have to commit to even more. And that's the way we look at this capital program, in the sense that if we do get it approved by the board, we do get it approved by the Capital Program Review Board, and we go forward, the true challenge is implementing it. Because I've said many times, and you all know this, when you go into somebody's pocket and take their money, they're a little bit resistant to that. But if you can show that you can deliver something for them, that they get value out of that, they will reinforce it. And someone has to follow this. There will be another process 5 years from now, and if we don't deliver this process well, it'll be that much harder to do it. So thank you very much. Now I think we have to move this. No? And approve, let's see, now may I have a motion, board member authorization for the approval of the proposed MTA 2015 capital program, and to authorize the chairman and chief executive officers to submit the capital program review board portion of the capital program to the CPRB for their review in accordance with Public Authorities Law 1269-B. Motion? Second. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. And now may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Tom. I'm going to try to squeeze 2 quick ones in. First, an explainer on the proposal to close stations midday, I guess, to find efficiencies on the Long Island Railroad. And second, a reaction to Congress passing the extension for positive train control.
In terms of the first, we're one of the things that goes in line with what the governor's asked us to do to try to deliver the program cheaper and faster is, are there ways we can provide access to contractors or own workforces to be able to get in, get very productive, and then get out. Probably the most significant example is we had to do it for Montague, but it was an out-of-phase closure for like 14 months. But clearly when you talk to contractors, people that have done business with us for over 20 years, it's the issue of access. So how can we do that? So that's an example of one where it is impactful to customers because you're closing the station, but the idea is shorter duration of that closure, and then they get in, they get out, and then the customer is not necessarily having to walk through a station that's undergoing semi-forms of construction for a longer period of time. On the PTC, as I said, I didn't say it, I said it in the Safety Committee meeting, which was earlier, and you may not have been there, is that the House passed a bill that included a provision to extend PTC deadline by 3 years to December 31st, 2018. We're heartened by that. I mean, it's not going to change our commitment to deliver it as soon as possible, but just about everybody in the industry was going to be in a position not to be able to make it by this December 31st, so this gives us more time. But we've committed the 2 commuter railroads to be done by that extended timeline, and we're going to keep the pressure on to get it done sooner.
I think we learned something about you today, Mr. Chairman, your interest in steeplechase. Were you a rider? That's not my question, but yeah.
Oh, it was actually in senior gym, and one of the we had a steeplechase.
Good. Well,
they made the hazards up as they went along, but it was. I won too.
Yeah.
I would have lost. I would have had probably the same experience.
Well, I understand the point. You made that point too about risk, about this is on paper. We still need it from the state and from the city. How nervous are you about that?
I wouldn't say I'm nervous. I think Jeff Kay and a number of other people talked. You're not there until you're there. In some cases, we're further along than we've been. In other cases, about the same. In other cases, maybe further back. But I will go by the statement I've made since I came back. If you take a look across the country, the level of commitment of the elected officials at a state or local level to support a capital program, New York's second to none. So even through this process to get to this point, there were some trying times, there were some difficult issues, but we got to the point where we got the commitments from the major stakeholders and support across the board. So not nervous as much as we're not there until we're there, but I'm very confident we will get there.
Good afternoon or morning. In terms of the city upping their commitment, how much did that play a role in bringing things like the Utica Avenue study and the transfer between the 3 and the L in Junius and Livonia to the forefront?
The transfer between the Junius, that location had been part of a discussion that the MTA had with the city over a number of years, as well as some of the other things that we talked about in the program. Utica is more recent, but certainly the city saying that for its level of commitment, it wants to be able to have a seat at the table and a say, and that was part of that dialogue.
When it comes to big mega projects, spending from the MTA on capital, there's a commentary in the transit community that says the MTA doesn't really know how to spend its money well and wisely. Now you're presenting
Does or does not? I'm sorry.
Does not. A lot of projects come in over budget. A lot of projects get delayed. Now we're seeing a capital plan that advocates say is very large, but you're cutting substantial amounts of money on it. One, I'd like to just get a commitment, or hear you say, are any projects going to fall by the wayside wholesale because of the reductions you've made on the, and if you can explain just a little bit more in detail, like what kind of efficiencies and savings, what does that mean to the rider? If you're saying we got, if you're chopping off all this money through efficiencies and savings, is the rider going to be impacted?
First of all, it's the biggest capital program we've ever had. So I'm a glasses three-quarters full person, so it's more than we've had at the prior capital program. In the presentation, when we talked about the governor asking us to be more efficient delivering the program, we committed to taking 6 to 8% of cost out of the program without reducing its scope. So that's an indication of better value for less money, or the same value for less money. Going back to your initial comment, I've been in this industry over 40 years, and I worked at a federal level when we've overseen projects that were delivered other places. And if you take a look at any of the projects, the systems that were built since the 70s, the order of magnitude overruns in terms of percentage, although you're getting into billion-dollar projects now, there used to be hundreds of millions. We're on par, if not at the higher end of the scale, in terms of better delivery against scope, schedule, and budget. But that's not to say we rest on our laurels and we can afford to have those kind of issues occur, because any dollar that is wasted is dollar that comes out of a further improvement that could be done for the system. Dana?
Thanks. 2 quick questions. First, it's widely assumed that the governor will pay for his contribution to the capital plan with some form of debt. Is there any form or structure of debt that would not be acceptable to you?
Whenever you look at debt finance, first of all, capital improvements, long-term capital improvements, where you're making an improvement to an asset the size we have, $1 trillion, and it's going to be a realized benefit for generations to come, that is definitely something that is debt financed. It's not for now type activity where if only people right now that could see that benefit, that would be closer to say that that's an operating cost. So, and whenever we have the issue of how much debt do we have out there, there's the debt cap issue, how much of our operating budget is being spent on debt finance, and those are always healthy tension dialogues. What's healthy tension? Where there's differing points of view saying, is it too high, is it too low, and then we give that information to the board, and the board makes an informed decision based on that. So whenever we are getting into the issue of debt finance, that's the dynamic that occurs, that's the dialogue occurs, and we end up at a place where the board is comfortable from a variety of different perspectives. You'd like not to have any debt, but then you won't be able to do state of good repair and normal replacement.
And my other question was, given all this controversy over the Thinks period underwear, do you have any, I don't know, your father, do you have any concerns about how women are portrayed in subway advertising?
If you're asking me that question as a person,
Yeah.
personally, not as chairman of the MTA, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the most difficult things you do in public service is, as much as I make jokes about I'm CEO and chairman and I got this division in my head, I have to do the same thing on a personal level. So in answer to your question, yes. But the First Amendment issue is the First Amendment issue. The only thing that is exceptionally frustrating for a lot of staff here to deal with is that I don't want to diminish how important the First Amendment is, but that's not the primary function of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority by any means. It's moving 8.5 million people a day safely and reliably to their jobs and their places of enjoyment.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just, I know there's a lot of technical talk that surrounds the capital plan. Just wondering if you can translate the meaning of the capital plan into what the impact will be for the riders. I know that that's a pretty heavy question to try to answer.
It's a good question because I got to remind myself there are a lot of people out there that aren't transportation experts, they're not engineers, so they're going to reduce it to their terms. There are certain things in life you expect to have happen. Turn the light switch on, power comes on. Flush the toilet, things leave. And those are entitlements, those are expectations. So from a state of good repair standpoint, renew the system, that's there. From improving the quality and level of service. So before you get to expand, provide additional capacity, people like to see technology. They like to be able to go down to a station and use this device. They like to be able to have real-time information about why the train's delayed, when they can expect, they'll make an informed decision. So they're going to see improvements in those areas. And then the third area, which is expansion. If we're going to see 1 million more people in the city by 2035, and you're seeing the growth of the city right now, we have to provide additional capacity. So I think Mr. Ferrer summarized it very well in the sense that there's really something for everybody, not only in terms of geographic, but those issues of renew, enhance, and expand. And that's important for New Yorkers. Because if I was entering the workforce right now, and I came to New York, and I wanted to spend the next 20 or 25 years here, I'd want to make sure the transit system that exists in the lifeblood for New York today is going to be that way 20 to 25 years from now. This is a good investment in that.
You alluded to finding the specific funding sources down the road, including when the legislature meets next year. Could you give us a few examples of the potential funding sources that have been looked at as part of this capital planning process, and what's emerging as potential new revenue streams?
You've seen bits and pieces of it in documentation people have gotten out there for a long time. The Move New York proposal is a proposal. There's been legislation submitted by both the Senate and the Assembly with respect to looking at funding sources. You can go to the record, that's there. There's also the issue of people are saying they really don't want new taxes. They may look at a diversion of existing taxes. And we've actually started the dialogue in terms of what can we do to reduce that gap by economies and efficiencies we bring to the table. For something that will be part of the legislative dialogue, it would be premature for me to single out any one, but you know the ones that are already out there. I may be an expert and have a lot of experience at delivering public transit and the nuances of it. I'm not an expert in the legislative process, so I'll let them answer that question.
But at this point, is there one source that's emerging,
No, there's no one source, and we said early on in this process is that we didn't have a problem going to a smorgasbord menu and choosing a number of ones as long as they were sustainable, they provided the revenue sources we needed, and we got to the point where we could fund this program.
At the committee meetings on Monday, there was some board discussion about how long it's taking to bring real-time information to the B division as well as replace the Metro card. Why is it taking so long, and what can you say to riders who say to me things like, well, we've been hearing it's going to take 3 to 5 years now to bring real-time information for like 10 years now?
It is probably one of the most frustrating issues not only to deal with but to explain. But we've got a system that was designed at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century where technology was nowhere near where it is today. So the ability and the fact that we're underground, the overwhelming majority of the system, because in most people's lifetime sitting in this room, in a subset, they've had GPS the entire life. But for my life, I didn't have GPS. So when you go underground and you don't have availability to global position sensors and the ability to find a specific location where something's at, people don't understand why it's hard to determine where a train is. The way we delivered countdown clocks and real-time information on the A division was very costly, very extensive, and if we were to follow that same exact path, it's probably 10 or 12 years away. So we're doing it a different way, but we're putting consistent pressure on the organization to see if we can actually find new ways. Technology on the communication side changes, the state of the art, every 7 years. Track technology changes about once every it moves continually, but that same step-level change takes 20 to 25 years. So there are times that we look today and we go, there's no technical solution to the problem, but in 2 or 3 years there may be, and we wouldn't hesitate. When we made the decision, the organization did, Jay did, two chairmen before me, to go to bus time, and we actually just put some people to work buying off-the-shelf systems, putting off-the-shelf components and putting a system together, we were able to deliver bus time in a much faster way. It's easier outdoors than it is underground, but that's part of the challenge. And we know the day we deliver it to people, we will have solved the problem.
Hey, going back to the debt question on the state level, do you have assurances from the governor that if they do take out debt to fund their portion of the plan, that the MTA won't be responsible for it, which could put pressure on fares?
If you watch the dialogue, and there was a dialogue that we talked about in terms of our talking to the chamber and the governor. It was a dialogue between the city and the state, and there were concerns that people had that somebody promises money, but then we incur the debt. So it was pretty clear in that discussion that they either hold the debt or we hold the debt. But if we hold the debt, the responsibility for the principal and interest stays with the state. That was very clear.
Oops. Sorry. To go back to the underwear period ads, I was wondering what specifically your concerns were about gender and the subway ads. As you said you had concerns, I was wondering what they are.
I think I was pretty clear that they offended me. And this is about as far as I'll go on the personal side. There are people that are near and dear to my heart, so I asked my wife and I asked my daughter, what they thought of them, because that means something to me. It means what all you feel. And on a personal level, I just found parts of those ads offensive, other parts not offensive, but that's the best I can say.
So there was some mention during the meeting about the vast majority of the money in the capital plan being for state of good repair, and there has been some criticism of the MTA that it's in a constant state of triage, of keeping things in good repair. Is there a way that you're doing those state of good repairs differently this time around so that they'll last longer and have more impact for the long term, so you don't have to keep doing the same things?
Everything we know in life has a life. So, a piece of paper has a life, a light bulb has a life, your sink at home has a life, but at some point in time it has to be replaced. At the front end of this process 30 years ago, it was pretty simple because the cars were in such bad shape, the track was in such bad shape, that's where the money went, it's where it had to go. When you have $1 trillion asset, takes 23,000 years of seconds to go $1 trillion. You have to be judicious in terms of assessing how much useful life is left in all of the assets. So I'll just get technical for just a minute. A reinforced concrete structure, that's what we learned in school as an engineer, is a life of 800 years, okay? I don't think we've had 800 years of reinforced concrete structures, but some have lasted real well, some haven't lasted real well. So when we do state of good repair projects, we put in new technology to enhance the life, but we're also aggressively pursuing a whole life asset management program so that we can use the latest engineering principles and concepts and inspection techniques to determine how much useful life you have in a particular asset before you replace it. Ideally, you'd like to replace the asset just before it becomes unreliable or unsafe and get its full useful life. You don't want to go beyond that for obvious reasons, but if you replace it too soon, that's money that could be spent in another area. So those are the different areas that we're going to have to deal with. And what I said in the public comments, the challenge, whoever is going to be taking this same discussion and argument forward 5 years from now will be that much more difficult.
I had a question relating to North Shore Bus Rapid Transit. It seems that a lot of at least some of the right-of-way has been damaged by Hurricane Sandy, so I wanted to see where the funding allocated for environmental and design work, how that will relate and what exactly that funding and that work means for the system.
In the alternatives analysis, the preferred alternative, and that's a formal definition of a process, that's not people voting what the preference is. We know what the route is, we know where the limits are, and so we can take a look at that right away. A large portion of the right away is the old North Shore rail line. Parts of it have been sold off, parts of it has fallen into Arthur Kilvan Cull. So we need to go through that and identify that, do the environmental assessment, what impacts it may have, and also from an engineering standpoint, get more information. Do we have to put fill in? Do we have to move the alignment? What do we have to do to upgrade it to make sure that it could hold the busway? That's it.
Policy. You're being sued. You're being sued about the ad policy. I think we need a comment on that.